You might be able to bind one of God's servants, but you can't bind the word. So that my bonds in Christ are manifest in all the palace. Whose palace is that? That's Caesar's palace. And in all other places. And many of the brethren in the Lord, now this is important to see, because there were those that were brethren in the Lord, and yet they waxed confident by his bonds, and were much more bold to speak the word without fear. So the Lord was using those bonds of Paul and him being imprisoned to encourage these others now to become even more bold in the declaring of Christ and his gospel. Where the world thinks to bind the word, the Lord uses the very opposite to cause the word to go forth. But now he's not glorifying these, his brethren in the Lord, because he says in verse 15, some indeed preach Christ even with envy and strife, and some also of goodwill. In other words, it's not in us. We are what we are by nature. The one preached Christ of contention, not sincerely, supposing to add affliction to my bonds. There were some that were the Lord's servants that when Paul was in prison, they were thinking good. He's getting what he deserved. They didn't like the fact that he was preaching the gospel to the Gentiles. In their minds, their prejudice, that's not where you should be. And Paul, you should be listening, because now the Lord's got you in bonds. That's what he's talking about. And yet, he calls them here brethren in the Lord. The other, verse 17, of love, knowing that I am set for the defense of the gospel. What then? Notwithstanding every way, whether in pretense or in truth, Christ is preached. It's not dependent upon man's motives. And so this is important. If a man is preaching Christ, who knows his thoughts and intents of his heart? But if what he's declaring is true to Christ as he is in this word, Paul says, I therefore do rejoice and will rejoice. He's not talking about false preachers. Here it has to do with men that in life, maybe we don't get along, but we listen to whether Christ is preaching. If he is, then we rejoice.